Hello, YouTube. Once again, this is your poster child for overactive brain disorder. This is an Ivory Watchtower production called Top 10 Consternations at the Jehovah's Witness Memorial 2016. Yes, I was there. I was kind of there in the stealth mode, and I'll tell you more about it. Yes, so I went to the memorial on the 23rd, which for me is last night as I'm recording this. Went alone. I really wanted to see what was going on without any distractions. Didn't disrupt anything. I want to see one in full before I decide whether I want to go back and or disrupt and or whatever. Afterwards, I went home and listed off some of the things that I found strange or off-putting or just didn't seem to make sense to me. I removed the ones related to the local congregation I went to. I really have nothing against that congregation. If I wanted to deal with some of the stuff that went on that related specifically to that congregation, if I remember and choose to do so, I might make a separate video about that with it. But for all the remaining stuff, I've condensed the list down to 10 things that I'm really puzzled by. If there's anyone who can explain some of this, or better yet, all of it, I'd be grateful for such. But anything that would help me understand is a great and useful thing. Present these from 10, the least important, to 1, the most important. And I'll just explain why I find the situation strange. Now, number 10 is a date with densities, I like to call it. This is basically the whole thing. I've seen it on several videos, like many of them from Mike and Kim, talking about how this is the wrong month to actually hold such a memorial. It should have been next month, not this month, because unlike what usually happens with Easter, where you start with the spring equinox, forward to the next full moon, forward to the following Sunday, which got skipped for the memorial, which is with instead you should basically go forward to the new moon, then count off to the days to get to the 14th, and which would put it a month later. And it makes sense because the barley harvest needs to come in and all that. Great. If you want to watch all that stuff, go ahead. I don't need to worry about that. Well, here in Wisconsin, we had a rainstorm last night of the memorial. Basically kept raining all night, turned into snow the following day, which is today, and it's just now over with. Now, in the past, the witnesses would have been extremely proud to have the memorial in the month following Easter, because then they could show off their brilliance and how, Christendom got it wrong. That seems to have changed because, if they do it this way, they can pretty much guarantee that their fun little event goes off first. With it going off first, it means that they get to steal some of the thunder from the whole Easter celebrations, etc. Number 9, answering questions not asked. Now, the conductor where I was made a point of specifying that the bread is an unleavened bread, unlike some places that have the leavened bread, which symbolizes sin, and that the wine is real, meaning it has alcohol, and that fermented grape juice or unfermented grape juice, whatever, the stuff that's fake would not have kept in the climate around Jerusalem. Even specified that the wine is red because only red wine would properly signify Christ's blood. My thing is, why do we need to continue dealing with this? If the goal of the memorial is to bring new people into the faith, can't you just, okay, here we go, we have this bread, it is unleavened. We have this wine, it is red, and it is actual wine. You bring out all the information, and then just describe it, and let those who come from a different tradition ask about, why do you do it this way and not the way our church does it, etc., etc. By being so descriptive up front, basically listing off all of this and all of that and all the other stuff, it really discourages people from asking questions. If they had any questions, they could have walked up to a witness and said, hey, I was wondering about this. Could you explain it to me? It seems that they didn't want that. Now, is this some sort of reflection on the congregation, or what they think the congregation is able to provide? I don't know. This is not not something I can fully answer. All I know is that this limits the amount of potential contact that a witness would have with a visitor, which would limit the amount of chances to convert such a person. And considering that the idea of the memorial is to get people to convert, this seems like a pretty strange way of going about it. Okay, number 8, I'm calling This Means a Lie. Now, it sounds pretty awkward, and it's intended to. Because in certain cases, the New World Translation goes and says, this means whatever, instead of this is whatever. By putting it as this means, the people who wrote the New World Translation are injecting an editorial bias into the passage. When you specifically declare that this is symbolic of whatever comes afterward, you don't give the reader the chance to actually use his or her reasoning faculties to figure out whether the text saying this is my body or this is the new blood, blood of the new covenant, or whatever. Don't give them the chance to say, oh, I wonder if this is real or if this is symbolic or literal. Now, the case in point from the memorial is when they read through stuff in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. I'm going to do 23 through 25 here. For I received from the Lord what I also handed on to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night in which he was going to be betrayed, took a loaf, and after giving thanks, he broke it, and said, this means my body, which is in your behalf. Keep doing this in remembrance of me. He did the same with the cup also after they had the evening meal, saying, this cup means the new covenant by virtue of my blood. Keep doing this whenever you drink it in remembrance of me. This is, again, if there's a question, you get the Catholics who say, well, this is my body. That means that the emblems turn into the body and blood of Christ as far as things are concerned, whereas a more Protestant Baptist tradition say, no, this is all symbolic. Well, the Watchtower has clearly taken sides and written which side it takes into the Scriptures. Giving an answer where the Scriptures actually pose a question. And instead of letting us decide what we think is the more proper interpretation, this is what they give us. Now, number 7, I call once a year. For the witnesses, the memorial is akin to Easter celebrations. And apparently from the way they're calculating it now, it's designed to land a few days before Easter to celebrate. And it's performing a similar function. Drive people to the religion, provide a platform so that they can speak to people unimpeded most of the time, provide a platform that they can get the message out and maybe get people to come in. And it provides the only time that a Jehovah's Witness will even see representations of the body and blood of Christ. Much less actually get to hold it or do anything with it. So, if it's so important that we observe these things, why do we limit it to once a year? Well, I don't know. Let's look at the first century model, see if there's anything that points us to one direction or another. Acts 2:42 in the New World Translation reads, and they continued devoting themselves to the teaching of the apostles, to associating together, to the taking of meals, and to prayers. Other translations talk about the breaking of bread here, which is an allusion to the Lord's evening meal. Well, why don't we actually bring the literal words here? Breaking the bread. Well, obviously it's to try to get people not to think of this, that, well, if you devote yourself to the breaking of bread, well, you can do that more than once in a year. You don't need a giant production, like you would for maybe a Memorial Day parade or like some sort of comic convention or anything like that. They do it once a year because you just need that much of a lead time to get it accomplishment. So, anyway, you have Acts 20, verse 7. It says, on the first day of the week, when we were gathered together to have a meal, Paul began addressing them, and as he was going to depart the next day, and he prolonged his speech until midnight. Well, okay, we have a meal. The whole congregation is taking part. I think we know which one is being talked about here. Now, even though it, like the verse up ahead, talks about coming together to break bread. Anyway, so the first century church was devoted to the taking of meals, per se, or breaking bread. And even this congregation in Troas met together on the first day of the week to do this. Now, if you actually look from the beginning of chapter 20 and read up to this thing, you see that this had happened after the Feast of Unleavened Bread, because Paul and Luke spent that feast in Philippi, not in Troas. So this congregation was actually sharing it at a time when the Feast of Unleavened Bread was not happening. So we have biblical precedent that the meal is not limited to that time. Number 6, I call hope beyond hope. This is the whole, do we have one hope in Christ or do we have two? The conductor tried to pass off the two hopes scenario, despite the statement in Ephesians 4, verses 4 through 6, that we were called into one hope. It's in a long passage that talks about, in the same context as everything else that is one in Christianity, such as one God, one Lord, one faith, one baptism. You're called into one hope. So, obviously, when Paul was doing this, he meant more than just saying, well, you have a hope, I have a hope, we all have a hope, and it's not necessarily the same hope. But let's assume for the moment that we really do have two hopes. Some get to go to heaven, and some get paradise earth for eternity. Well, let's see. What would we make of 1 Corinthians 10, verses 14 through 17? It reads, therefore, my beloved ones, flee from idolatry. I speak as to men with discernment. Judge for yourselves what I say. Wait a minute. Isn't that called independent thinking, and it's from Satan and should be avoided? Oh, okay. I'm distracting myself here. But let's go here. The cup of blessing that we bless, is it not a sharing in the blood of the Christ? The loaf that we break, is it not a sharing in the body of the Christ? Because there is one loaf, we, although many, are one body, for we are all partaking of that one loaf. Now, it's time to inject a little logic in here called the contrapositive, which is basically, it says, we are one body because we are taking that one loaf. Well, contrapositively, if we're not partaking of that loaf, we are not part of that one body. Which, I know, you get people's like, oh wow, we're not one of the anointed ones, we're just one of these other sheep. But how are you applying that? Because does that mean that there are other passages that don't apply to you because you're not part of that one body? How do we know which is which? What is it that we should be following if we are not part of that one body? And what is it that we shouldn't be following? And how do we tell the difference? I really want to know the answer to that question because, according to the witnesses, I'm not part of that one body and probably have little to no chance of ever becoming part of that one body. So I need to know exactly how much the Bible applies to me. Obviously this doesn't. Anyway, also, if there are two hopes, where's Jesus going to be? Luke 22:28-30, he promises his disciples that they will be with him, as he confers a kingdom on there, and he will be eating and drinking with them, which is obviously in heaven. Of course, Luke 23:42-43 says that that he tells the thief that the thief would be with him in paradise. Okay, so is Jesus going to be in heaven, or is he going to be in paradise? Is he going to be shuttling back and forth between the two? You have to schedule your things like, oh, I want to do things on the 31st of December in year 5 million. Oh, I'm sorry, he's going to be in heaven at that point. You aren't. Anyway, this is getting weirder as we speak. Now, number 5 I call Judas, Judas, Judas. The conductor obliquely mentioned that Jesus conferred the kingdom on his, quote, 11 faithful disciples. And he read Luke 22:19-20 as part of the service. But let's add the next verse, Luke 22:21, so get a little more context on this here. I basically have it in italics here. Also, he took a loaf, gave thanks, and broke it. He gave it to them, saying, "This means my body, which is to be given in your behalf. Keep doing this in remembrance of me." Also, he did the same with the cup after they had the evening meal, saying, "This cup means the new covenant by virtue of my blood, which is to be poured out in your behalf. But look, the hand of my betrayer is with me at the table." This is one of those things, okay, was Judas actually there with them when the kingdom was conferred? Because it happens just like, as we mentioned, like about 8 verses later. And doesn't say anything about, well, we booted Judas out and let him go and do what he wanted to, and then this happened. So was Judas there to get the kingdom or not? Well, and anyway, this verse says that he partook of this stuff because Jesus said that, hey, look, the hand of my betrayer here is with me, after he handed out the bread and the wine. So, should we be partaking, even though we're not, some of the people who are going to receive the kingdom, and we happen to be there? If not, why does Luke, who's an inspired author of 2 books of the New Testament, the one bearing his name and the one called Acts, why does he record it that way? Does this mean that Luke got it wrong? This brings me to number 4, which I call Eat, Drink, and Be Merry. Scriptures specifically say at Matthew 26:26 that Jesus told the apostles to take and eat the bread and the wine. Now, certain other translations have the same language, take and eat, in some of the other accounts, such as Mark 14:22 and 1 Corinthians 11:24 in the King James Version, for example. Also the New King James Version, which I happened to have while I was at the memorial. The issue is not really whether this language of take and eat should be in all of the accounts. Rather, the issue is whether Scriptures expect us all to take and eat. Watchtower says that we're not supposed to take and eat because we're supposedly not part of this covenant, but we're supposed to be a respectful observer. But where is an example of such a respectful observer that would appear in the Scriptures? Clearly, I don't want to use clearly, but anyway, wouldn't you expect such an example to be there? Scripture says do this, provides an example of people doing it. Scripture says don't do this, provide an example of people getting in trouble for doing it when they weren't supposed to, or somebody specifically refraining because they were told not to, something like that. Where is this example of non-participation in the Scriptures? Also, let's look at John 6:53-57. I mean, I loved Parker's Faithful Slaves, a thing where he basically partook of the emblems and then read the beginning of this passage, to the people as he walked out. So, Jesus said to them, "Most truly I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in yourselves. Whoever feeds on my flesh and drinks my blood has everlasting life, and I will resurrect him on the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Whoever feeds on my flesh and drinks my blood remains in union with me, and I in union with him." By the way, I don't see the word union in the original text, but let's move on. "Just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so also the one who feeds on me will live because of me." Wait, I thought Jehovah was the one who decided that, but all right. Anyway, just getting to the thing. Jesus was like, unless you partake of this, you have no life in yourselves. Now, the classic Watchtower excuse is, well, this was said before the actual evening meal was instituted. Well, let me point out something else. We have John chapter 2, verses 18 beyond, where it talks about Jesus saying that I will destroy this temple and I will raise it up on the third day. Now, in this one, it specifically is meant that it says that the temple he was talking about was his body. So, Jesus saying he would raise his body up on the third day. And, here there's a specific connection made, and yet witness theology says nothing about that. In fact, they try to deny that this has any connection whatsoever. So, just because it doesn't say something doesn't mean it doesn't connect. Just because it does say something doesn't mean that it, should be ignored. This is getting rather strange, but let's move on to the top 3. And before we do that, I just want to preface that with a few things. All of these previous consternations are, in some ways I consider minor, because they're just dealing with either mechanical aspects of the ceremony, or we talk about a particular aspect and is there a biblical justification for doing it one way versus another way. These are, pretty straightforward arguments that have been going here, but all it is just arguing about the event itself. These last 3 are kind of special in my mind. The reason I put them in the top 3 is because I see them as impugning the character of either Jesus or Jehovah. And once you get to that, it takes on a slightly bigger tone as far as I'm concerned. The Holy Spirit is already being impugned by being misclassified as some sort of force or road sign or whatever. The road sign that's very patient until it gets hit by a truck. Instead of being a person who is fully God. So religion's already got it out for the Holy Spirit, apparently. But anyway, these last 3 deal with lies that are told about Jesus and Jehovah, and this is why they're the top of the list. Number 1, 2, and 3. Let's get to number 3. I call number 3 losing focus. Now, the memorial, as it has always been, has been focused on the death of Christ and the benefits associated with that death. Now, mind you, I understand there are benefits to Christ's death. We can speak of his shed blood. Well, if he didn't, if he didn't die, he didn't shed his blood. So obviously, well, you could shed blood without dying, but it's all part of the thing. It's all part of the ransom that is there. Where, according to the witnesses, he presented the value of his life, as the sacrifice that purifies us from sin. Jesus paid the penalty of death on our behalf, and as such, we can be baptized into his death. Of course, the biggest benefit of Christ's death is that it allowed him to be raised from the dead. Kind of hard to do that if you don't die, which neither the memorial nor any other meeting of the witnesses ever focuses on. At least not with any degree even approaching that of the memorial. You're talking about his death. Now, they talk about Romans 6 verse 7, giving us a second chance because we've paid the penalty for this life's sins with our death. That's not what it means at all. It's in the context of being baptized into the death of Christ, and that because we have died with him in this way, we too, when he rises, will live a new life. Well, he's already risen, given the opportunity, but that's the thing, is that by participating in his death, we participate in his life. So, and because Christ can't die again, considering he has already died and rose again, then we, who are united with him, will rise with him. 1 Corinthians 15, verses 3 through 8 is basically an early creed of the church. And the beginning part of it is, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures. He was buried. He was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures. And that he appeared to a lot of people. It's proving that, yes, he had risen from the dead. Now, basically, the death and the resurrection are given at least equal weight here. Maybe a little more towards the resurrection. But, even still, at just even, that's important. Failing to recognize this focus minimizes the impact that Jesus has on the world. Because, it's like, oh yeah, he died. Well, lots of people have died. What's so special about this one? Well, he was the Son of God. Okay, again, what's so special of it? It's not until you add the "and he rose again for our sins" that it actually makes any sense. Okay, number 2 is called Jesus being made in the image of Adam. And this is one, because the conductor mentioned that Jesus was to be a corresponding sacrifice to provide the balance for the sin of Adam, a perfect man for a perfect man. This basically diminishes Jesus and reduces him to a mere human. Although a perfect human, but still a human. Now, witnesses are all big on having that Jesus was to be an exact equivalent, corresponding sacrifice. That, Jesus was not worse than Adam, but he wasn't any better either. Now, this basically, diminishes the idea of ransom, because one of the things is it's saying, well, you're only supposed to pay an exact equivalent. If somebody steals something from me, they might pay me the value, the exact equivalent of what the thing was worth. And I might expect that. I might also accept that as being sufficient. But this doesn't necessarily mean that it's any sort of expression of love or any sort of expression of remorse, whatever. Now, if somebody comes to me and wants to pay me more than what was lost, now I might see that as a sign of respect or love or compassion or whatever. This is the thing, is that Jesus paid, the death of Jesus paid more than what Adam had, and there is nothing wrong with saying that. God, out of an expression of love, could very well pay something that was worth more than the value of the lives that were to be redeemed by it. And by doing so, it demonstrates his love for us. That while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Now, the teaching as it's listed here is kind of like saying that, okay, Adam was a defective light bulb, and now that we've taken this light bulb out of Adam and replaced it with Jesus, okay, we're now where we were had Adam not sinned. So it also means that what Jesus could do for us isn't any more than what Adam could do had he not sinned. And but of course, you also say that Jesus was the first and only direct creation of Jehovah. We'd think that such a powerful being would be able to do a little bit more than just replace what Adam had not done. But so Jesus is actually greater than Adam, and it's pretty obvious throughout the scriptures that this is the case. And now we get to the number 1 reason for I have consternation at the memorial. It's basically that in the memorial and in a couple other publications, we see the Watchtower as basically judging Jehovah. Now they claim to respect Jehovah, that he's the Almighty, he has all this power, and yet they keep talking about well, Jehovah needs a legal justification to save mankind, and that's that Christ's death provided that legal justification. Now let's take a look at the book Draw Close to Jehovah, page 138. Basically, it says the ransom became necessary because of the sin of Adam. Okay, the fact that it's talking about something being necessary is already kind of disturbing, but let's continue. By disobeying God, Adam bequeathed to his offspring a legacy of sickness, sorrow, pain, and death. God could not yield to sentiment and simply commute the death sentence. To do so would be to ignore his own law. The wages sin pays is death. And were Jehovah to invalidate his own standards of justice, then universal chaos and lawlessness would reign. Okay, let's start unpacking this. First, who has the right to challenge Jehovah's actions? Satan doesn't have the right. Satan's not Jehovah. Angels don't have the right. We certainly don't have the right. This is basically Jehovah's show. He can do what he wants. Now, mind you, he does what is good, but he still can do what he wants. To say that God could not yield to sentiment is basically to say that God's moral law is so absolute, not even Jehovah can break it. Now, it isn't that it says there's something greater than Jehovah, which is basically the law. How are you the Almighty if you have to submit to a law? This is basically a variation on what's called the Euthyphro argument. Plato, in one of his dialogues, had Socrates debating with this guy Euthyphro, who is supposedly an expert on piety. And Plato asked, is an action good because the gods will it, or do the gods will actions because they are good inherently? And so basically in our case, it's like, is action good because Jehovah wills it, or does Jehovah will an action because it's good independently of him? Now, you can sit there and think that, but basically both sides lead to problems. One being this situation we have here where there is something greater than Jehovah, namely whatever laws and actions that he wills because he has to abide by a standard of justice or moral integrity in order to make them. The other one basically being that what we call morals are just really arbitrary, and that if God had somehow declared that rape and murder were actually good things, they would suddenly become good things, and we would all be on board with that. The true answer is that neither one of them is actually correct. Jehovah wills an action because he is good. And because God is good, we know what is good by comparing what is happening to what he does or what he would do. To further illustrate the situation, take note that there is a difference between these three sentences. God would not yield to sentiment and simply commute the death sentence. God should not yield to sentiment and simply commute the death sentence. God could not yield to sentiment and simply commute the death sentence. Now, the first one is basically saying this is what God wouldn't do. God just wouldn't do this because of what and you could appeal to the nature of God. God's still sovereign. Everything's happy. Second one's a little bit stranger, but it's still there. God should not yield to sentiment and simply commute the death sentence. This kind of puts whoever writes it in the position of, okay, I know what is right, and this is what, giving advice to God. Now, saying that humans should give advice to God is kind of weird, but at least in this case, it's correct advice that, God should uphold the laws or whatever. Okay. We'll let that one slide. Again, God is still sovereign, but we just have somebody who thinks that he knows what's good for God. It's the third one that the Watchtower chose, and this is why it gets a little weird for me. God could not yield to sentiment and simply commute the death sentence. Now, this challenges the sovereignty of God. That, because, as I've been pointing out, that if God is almighty, he has the ability to do whatever he wills to do. And if God wanted to commute the death sentence, he could do it. Now, just saying, well, hey, there's a law that says that, sin, leads to death, and therefore, since they sinned, there should be death involved. Okay, that's fine. Now, who made that law? Would that be Satan? No. Angels? No. Humans? No. Animals, plants? All right, right out. The one who made the law is God Almighty, Jehovah. So, if God, understood that there would be a situation where he might have to commute a death sentence, he could have simply not made the law that sin leads to death. Now, mind you, I kind of like it the way it is. Well, not like it. I kind of understand it the way it is. That, sin, basically offending the creator of the universe, and that would make sense that such a thing would lead to death. I get that. But, to say that God could not do something, because that, again, it's placing something ahead of God. And, this is where that whole, Jehovah needs to provide legal justification for saving mankind. No. Legal justification is needed by those who are under the law. Jehovah is not under the law. Jehovah made the law, and being the good God that he is, he will make the law in such a way that what happens as a result of that law is good. Claiming that he is under the law and has to abide by it, as if he were some sort of creature, denies his power, denies his being the Almighty, and actually sides with Satan in the challenge that Jehovah is unfair because, well, he didn't even follow his own law. Well, no, I mean, if Jehovah is in that position, he wouldn't have made the law in such a way that he couldn't follow it. This is the biggest problem I have with the memorial and things like that, in that they are impugning Jesus, they're impugning Jehovah. I mean, and impugning the Spirit is just kind of like a side trick that happens a lot. And so this is one of the reasons that I haven't been to one until now, and I'm not sure if I want to go to one again without some sort of plan for something. But anyway, that's a different story for a different time. Well, I just want to thank you for sticking with us, watching. Please like, share with somebody who you think might be helped by it, comment, subscribe, all that. It's great being able to make another video. Glad to talk to you again. Until we meet again, enjoy.